Order. Oh, you are beautifully well behaved. You have no idea how much better you are than the normal lot we have in here. But I'm sure we'll see many of you here in your own right in due course. It's a very great pleasure to see you all here this afternoon, and to see the, oh yes, that's the rule, as the head doorkeeper has just said. You have to know that when the occupant of the chair is on their feet, you have to sit down. We have to tell the normal MPs that as well. It's wonderful to see you all here this afternoon, and so often the media and commentators complain that young people don't pay enough attention to politics. In my experience, it's exactly the opposite. Your generation have a tremendous sense of duty and understanding and involvement in public affairs. It's those who are older than you who don't do their duty. You are all doing an absolutely terrific job. So let's get on with the session. The Youth Parliament will now consider the fourth motion of the day: put an end to knife crime. The full motion is printed, as you will all see, on the order paper. And I call Elia Yusuf to move the motion. Order, give the man a chance.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My friends, enough is enough. Too many in our communities have fallen to the crippling plague of knife crime erupting across our cities. Too many of our constituents have been mercilessly wrenched away from both their families and their lives. And too many of our politicians are standing idly by, ignoring the plight of thousands of young people living in fear of their lives. As the voice of young people, we can no longer allow their anguish to go unheard and uncared for by a political elite unaffected by the torment we face daily in our very own communities. The idea that knife crime in the UK is some sort of distant problem is unfortunately a wishful myth, as in the 12 months to June 2019, there had already been 235 murders using knives. Furthermore, knife crime is becoming an ever more potent issue for young people, as there's been a 93% increase in under 16s being admitted to hospitals due to knife attacks. My friends, these figures are a terrifying reminder to us that we cannot be ignorant to the emerging lure of knives that seduces those that this government has neglected in the past. This government has slashed youth services, diminished mental health support, and taken thousands of police officers off of our streets, which has allowed crime to flourish, leaving our young people unprotected. Furthermore, the concerning lack of opportunity for young people in Britain has merely fueled this epidemic, as youth across this country turn to other means in achieving economic stability or merely finding companionship amongst members of their gang. The truth of the matter is, Madam Deputy Speaker, that those who carry knives carry them due to a multitude of factors: lack of trust in police, austerity, the media, gangs, yet also a desolate culture that has isolated young people, pushing them to crime. Young people feel that they are no longer being defined by their achievements, but by the postcode that they live in, and this mentality has gone too far. In order to make any lasting impact, we must reignite the flame of success and ambition that thrives within our people, reminding them of their potential outside a life on the knife's edge. We must stand together, my friends, to fight the terror of knife crime, piercing our livelihoods and puncturing our futures. This is why this speech is not only an appeal to Westminster, but to the millions of young people living amongst us who have felt the true angst caused by knife crime. If any vulnerable young people are watching this today, I ask you, I beg of you, save a life and surrender your knife. Thank you.
Order. we're going to have to do something about this clapping business, because it's absolutely great to clap, and that was a great speech. But if you take up all the time clapping, then lots of people won't get a chance to speak. So we'll have little claps. Would that be okay? I now call Davinia Omoyo, who will speak on behalf of the South East.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Knife crime. 2 words that strike a nerve in everybody here. The knife epidemic that has touched each and every one of us, as it rips families apart, makes our streets dangerous, and takes our loved ones. Now, the question I ask myself is, how can I possibly urge you to vote against this motion? Well, knife crime is a mountainous issue, as it stems from gang crime, poverty, a lack of opportunity, inequality, austerity leading to toxic environments, and much more. However, a profound issue that aids the knife epidemic is a lack of education. Something so simple that gives someone a glimmer of hope, of change, and a chance to do better than those before them. Education has a greater influence than we can all imagine. It gives someone the ability to change, the ability to end the misconception that by carrying a knife, you are safe, entitled, and protected. We could possibly look at the causes of why young people feel pressure to carry a knife. Young people feel compelled to carry a knife in order to arm themselves against a rival. The sole reasons are wanting to feel superior to others, as somebody else could also be carrying a knife, wanting to be respected or even feared by their peers, and there are many more reasons. Education alone appears to address the issue of the complex knife crime. However, the obstacle is much bigger than a PSHE lesson in school, because most of us here know they don't work, seen by young people as too boring, not relevant, as simply just effort. But what about the child who isn't suited to the classroom? How do we tackle this? It is a complex issue that requires a significant approach. The rate of permanent exclusion in the most deprived 10% of schools is double that of the least deprived, demonstrating how little education can have an impact on knife crime. Everyone in here agrees that knife crime is a crippling issue. In Essex alone, 11,033 people voted for knife crime. Yet, if we use education to prevent knife crime, we hit massive barriers that are time-consuming, making it harder for us to reach our end goal. Little consensus on the driving force behind the knife epidemic means that multiple issues that fuel the crisis have to be addressed. A decline in police officers on the street, constantly moving from home to home, issues with law enforcement, and knife crime not being seen as a health issue all act as a catalyst to raid the adult belief that by carrying, using, or turning to a knife is a good idea. Knife crime is a significant issue, but maybe it's too much to take on. I ask you, are we biting off more than we can chew? Can we, as a youth parliament, address this in a year? We are all affected by the effects of knife crime, despite how big or small. There's a plethora of deep-rooting causes that aid the knife crime to increase. Whilst I believe in a knife crime campaign, I believe for us to tackle the issue that has caused vast amounts of our constituents' pain, it would be immense.
Very good, thank you. Do I see someone from the southwest who want to speak? Gentleman in the waistcoat.
Oh, yes. Shakur Grant, MYP for Bristol. I'd like to say first off that being brought from the heavens just to be dropped into the deep side of the ocean and to be brought up by a mother just to see another one be burying their child. Mothers shouldn't have to be burying their children should be burying them. The thing is, knife crime is arguably the biggest epidemic in modern day Britain, other than the notorious Brexit. And it has not only caused pain across the UK, but also controversy. Stop and searches are the main controversy. They are not there to help half the time. As being a young black boy myself, I've not appreciated the amount of times I've been stop and searched unaccordingly without even a receipt, and I've been asked not to record, and it's just a bother for many of us. Also, there needs to be more intervention, as it is necessary, because the government needs to focus on things such as focus groups for those who are put in those situations on estates, who have nowhere else to go, who feel as if that there's no other place for them to go. There also needs to be a reopening of the over 600 youth centres that have been closed around the UK, which is absolutely ridiculous, as it means that there is no place for them to go after school, and the only places that they can go are in the societies that they have lived in and that they have been brought up in. Also, there needs to be drop-in boxes where people who feel as if maybe they're making the wrong choices should actually put their knife down and maybe think about the situation that they're about to put themselves in, because us young people sometimes don't know the consequences that lead because of our actions. Many more issues are leading and that follow that as well, and because they cause a social impact. There are teens bleeding and dying, and there are mothers crying, and there is no support from them, whether it's their health or well-being, whether it's their mental state. People around me and many other young people I can see across me are hurting as because people around them are hurting. In Bristol, there were 3 stabbings in 3 days. I believe that this is just a ridiculous amount of stabbings, and I believe that we need to do something about this. And I've said it once, and I will say it again, that we need to make sure there is support and not sorrow for these hurt people, for these people who are in such pain. Because fear is the cause, not their anger and their rage. And the government needs to realise that the racial judgment isn't going to solve this problem, but help is going to solve this problem. Thank you, and I please hope that you vote before it's too late.
From Wales down here. Yes, lady in the grey suit.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm Charita Garadanagar, and I'm a MYP from Neath Patalba. Let us end this knife crime epidemic and other related forms of gang violence by calling on the government to make greater investments in communities, poverty, education and youth services. For example, across Wales, we have seen community centres closed or kept open on a shoestring by the unsung heroes who volunteer their time and effort so young people can engage in positive interests and activities. We have felt the impact of cuts to youth services across the UK, which has had a devastating effect on many young people who are vulnerable and need strong role models in their lives. Many young people living in poverty cannot afford to pay for leisure and recreation activities, which their more affluent peers enjoy. Let's break down the barriers between the police and young people and invest in intergenerational projects and volunteering opportunities. Too many lives are lost to knife crime, and I say the government can do much more to help. Thank you.
And is there someone from Northern Ireland? Madam.
Thank you. My name is Judy Floyd and I'm from East Belfast. I'm on the Youth Select Committee for Knife Crime, and I believe this is an incredibly important issue, especially in Northern Ireland, as problems such as arranged fights at streets with children as young as 12 coming with knives to fight other children, and a murder of a Belfast man who was on his way home from church and was stabbed to death in the middle of the road. However, I believe if this was the campaign that came out of the Commons last year for Youth Parliament, that it is now time for action from the actual government, and not just us as a Youth Parliament to stand here and debate it year after year. Thank you.
And what about the Northwest? Gentleman there. Yes, you sir.
Me?
I'll come to you in a minute. Let's have this gentleman first, and then I'll come to you. I'm sorry I can't call you by name. It's impossible. But would you give your name, please?
Ben Lomas, Member of Youth Parliament for St Helens. Thank you. Over the last 5 years, knife crime has nearly doubled, increasing every year to the point where 43,516 knife crime offences took place in the 12 months leading up to March of 2019. That means that on average there were 119 knife-related incidents a day, with young people being badly affected. In my constituency of St Helens, 2,264 people voted to tackle knife crime in the recent Make Your Mark ballot, and nationally, 291,199 young people voted to tackle knife crime, making it the most voted for devolved topic. It is simply unthinkable that this crisis has escalated so rapidly, and that there are young people across the country who are afraid of their own or other communities and hold the fear that they may be stabbed or attacked. There will be those that say nothing can be done to prevent knife crime because it is unpreventable and it is a norm of society that young people must deal with. Youth Parliament, this ill-founded logic must be dispelled. To elicit the change required, we need to address the root causes of knife crime. Rather than focus on outdated prevention methods, such as the controversial stop and search system, which destroys trust between young people and the police, we need longer-term solutions and not quick fixes. We need to see more education for young people who are at risk of becoming involved in violence and who may be inclined to turn to a knife, so that young people are supported to make better decisions. We need to ensure that politicians from across the political divide implement a comprehensive and fully resourced anti-poverty strategy so that young people don't feel like they and their communities have been fundamentally let down, raising the likelihood of them turning to violent measures. And on top of that, we need to ensure that people everywhere understand that this is not and should not be tolerated in our society. MYPs, the Youth Parliament has played a pivotal role in bringing about pioneering change for young people in the past. And as we look to the future, this needs to continue on pertinent issues such as this, because the struggles of today develop the strengths of tomorrow. We are gifted now with the opportunity to make tackling knife crime our campaign for the year. And so MYPs, please vote to ensure that no more innocent young lives are lost on our streets. Thank you.
Very good. I can see there's a lot of support for that position from over there. We'll go down here now. Gentleman in the waistcoat.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm Ross Gibb and I represent the North East of Scotland. I'm very fortunate that my home area of Aberdeenshire is relatively low when it comes to crime levels as the sort. But my modern studies teacher, Mrs O'Reilly, taught me a good philosophy of the labelling theory. If you tell somebody that they're a certain ethnicality, that they're more likely to commit knife crime, it will actually have an effect. People start to think, I'm getting told this every day in the media, I'm hearing it all the time, is this true? And it gets to the point where they start believing it. If you hear something enough, you begin to believe it. That's why we need to stop rationalising it in the media, make it so it's a point that we need to fix it rather than just pointing our fingers and going, well, it's this group of people that are doing it, let's stop and search them all the time. There's ways and means, and stop and search is absolutely not one of them. Thank you very much.
And the gentleman in the green jumper who I almost called a little while ago, it's your turn now, sir.
Oh, me? Oh, go on, I'm Milo Dwyer, MYP for Sefton. Let me just get it up. Here it is. So if knife crime was a disease, it would be considered a health crisis, an epidemic, if you will. I'm sure I wouldn't be the only one in the room who has witnessed people either get stabbed or have been caught with knives very close to their homes in their very communities. For example, I've seen people be tackled to the ground because they've been carrying a knife outside my very house. When you strip away youth services, you strip away opportunity. You strip away ambition from young people. I, as well as being a young person, I also work in a couple of youth centres in my local communities, and we've been seeing the effects of stripping back on youth services. We've also been seeing the wonderful effects that youth services can have on reducing knife crime and other antisocial behaviours in our local area. So I urge you to vote for putting an end to knife crime so we can campaign for adequate funding for youth services and other provisions. Thank you.
And who do we have in the middle here? Aha! Lady with the grey jacket.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Mafusa Kandokla. I'm from Birmingham and I represent the West Midlands. Knife crime is an epidemic that is very obviously on the rise, and is an issue that is heavily covered in our news outlets, and it's something that we hear about on a daily basis. But even still, the coverage is very little compared to the magnitude of the problem. I believe knife crime is the issue that we should back today, because as well as it being an immense issue in itself, it backs several of the other issues that we've discussed today. The stigma attached to knife crime is very commonly associated with certain groups of people, such as those of a specific ethnicity or race, and this can contribute to certain forms of hate crime. As you may know, last year the same motion was voted on by us here in the chamber, and in Birmingham we have seen some very positive effects towards this motion through our campaigning. So one of the things that we've done in Birmingham this past year is the MVP program, something called the Members in Violence Prevention Program, which we implemented from Scotland. So what this is it's a program that basically aims to prevent certain forms, prevent a variety of forms of violence, such as sexual harassment, rape, assault, knife crime, and a lot of others, by educating young people by using something called the active bystander method, which is not only known to contribute to young people reducing, getting involved with knife crime, but also reducing isolation amongst young people, which is also known to be a common contributing factor to a lot of mental health issues. This MVP program also teaches life skills to young people, which and so provides a form of curriculum for life, another issue that we have discussed in the chamber today. This is a motion that somewhat backs every single motion that we've discussed so far, whilst tackling a massive issue in itself, and that's why I believe we should back this motion today. Thank you.
Now, I'm looking at the London region. Do we have the MYP for Hammersmith and Fulham? Yes, sir. Ozan Erda.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Year after year, knife crime has continued to rise across the UK. Year after year, reports have been published and promises made, but too little has changed. In London alone, in the year up to March 2019, there were 14,800 reported offences involving a knife, and 474 in my borough alone. That's more than one every day. The government's decision to tackle knife crime by adopting a public health strategy is a positive step, and one that many of us have campaigned for, and has worked successfully in areas in the past. But the government has failed to deliver on this promise and has failed to put forward funding and credible proposals in order to adopt this approach. Youth services have seen funding cuts of almost £500 million since 2010, and there is no indication that these will be reversed anytime soon. Additionally, we must not ignore the role that a spike in child poverty and a decade of austerity have had in creating the social conditions in which this epidemic has emerged. Too many young people have been deprived of the opportunities to build themselves a brighter future and strive to achieve their passions. Too many young people have been deprived of the basic living standards, and this should not be happening in this day and age. Knife crime received the most votes in Make Your Mark last year and received the most votes for a devolved issue in Make Your Mark this year, which shows the importance that young people place on it, and as a youth parliament, we must act. Only by making this our national campaign will we be able to make a difference. Only by continuing to work together, as we have done over the past year, will we be able to eradicate the disease on our communities that is knife crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, over here somewhere, there must be a contingent from the east of England. Who's from the east of England? You, sir.
Last year, there were over 40,000 incidents of knife crime nationwide. This must stop. This year, just under 300,000 young people voted for us to debate this topic. We, as the young people of this nation, are calling out, and it's about time that the voices of the voiceless are heard. Our young people shouldn't leave their houses in fear, armed with knives, in preparation to respond to violence with violence. Instead, our young people should leave their homes, armed with the knowledge that they can become the doctors, the lawyers, the politicians, and community leaders of our futures, armed with the knowledge that the state cares for them and for their safety. More must be done to assist those in affected areas through charities such as the Taz Life organisation. More must be done to nurture young people through equal opportunity. More must be done to help families cope with poor education and poverty. And so too, more must be done to help understand why young people choose this dangerous lifestyle rather than demonizing them. But it cannot stop here. This plague of violence, terror, and abuse on our streets cannot be cured solely by the work of schools and philanthropists. For no man is an island. It is down to us, the community, in addition to the government, to support in the eradication of knife crime. Every man is a piece of the continent. We must oppose violence and aggression with peace and a sense of belonging to those who are marginalized. Therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. I urge you all, MYPs, community leaders, parents, anyone in position of power, and all you gathered here today, to encourage our young people to drop their weapons of destruction and alternatively hand them the tools of construction, education, opportunity, and a future. Thank you.
Who do we have from the southeast over here? The lady in the black and white. So sorry. Right, okay, you're both wearing black and white. Well, this lady first, and then I'll come to this lady later.
I'll do this right now.
Remind you to say your names, and we need to have a note of them. I can see that's being dealt with there. Would you say your name and where you're from, please?
My name is Lillian, and I am from the southeast. Sorry, I'm so nervous right now.
Go on, you.
I have seen the tragic effect of knife crime on a number of people, friends, family. I remember watching my uncle's blood trench clothes twisting and turning in the washing machine. You can wash away blood, but you can't wash away the effects of knife crime. So many children have died. How many more need to die until we wake up to realize that it is not okay? Those people are like you and me. At least they were. By stopping this epidemic, we are saving people. In my county, county lines is spreading like an uncontrollable disease. Young children are being sent into cities unfamiliar to them to transport drugs. And we are acting like this is okay. We are putting money, the government is putting money into stop and searches. What statistics show that these actually work? These methods actually work. These people need to get the help they need. It is not okay to take someone else's life. These families who can't afford these things, they are paying money. They're paying money for them to have funerals, things they couldn't afford initially. And we think it's okay. We have statistics, we have numbers. We know tens of thousands of people are dying every single year, and we're okay with it. I am not okay with it. You guys should not be okay with it. These are youths just like all of you and me. They're just like us, our neighbours. They are next door. Where are they now? They're beneath us. I urge you to vote for this because this is what really matters. Everything, all these things that we are voting for currently, they matter. But I'm telling you guys, this is people's lives. They're dying. We need to vote for this.
Now, we're almost at the end of this session, but I will take one more speech from this side and then one more from that side. Gentleman at the back.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm Cameron Hodds, the Member of Youth Parliament for East Norfolk in the East of England. So many people here today are talking about knife crime based in big cities like London, Leeds, Bristol. And I understand that it's such an epidemic and such an issue in these big places. But there are so many smaller towns, such as Great Yarmouth, where I'm from, that are deeply affected by this too. I was on the Great Yarmouth Mercury website and found that when the keyword knife is searched, there are 15 reports of a knife crime being committed in 2018. Now, this may not sound like a lot, but Great Yarmouth is a very small town. There was one report released on the 15th of February 2018 that stated there had been 16 knife crimes committed in just 4 weeks. Now, I'm not very good at maths, so it took me a while to figure this out. That's 4 knife crimes per week. Now, this may not sound like a lot for those of you from larger areas, and I understand that. I understand that you guys are from larger areas, you're going to have higher statistics. But this is a horrifyingly high statistic for a town that has never experienced anything like this before, at least not to this scale. Now, knife crime can be expected anywhere, as can any crime in general, and unfortunately, we are never going to live in a completely crime-free world. However, as a pressure group, we need to push for the crimes that are leaving people ages 11 to 18, all ages in fact, in hospitals and critical conditions, to be cracked down upon and targeted over petty crimes. It has been calculated that there have been 30 knife crimes committed in the Great Yarmouth Borough alone in 1 year. And as I stated before, with such a small town, this is horrendous. What does this mean for our entire nation? How many people need to be seriously or even fatally injured for something to change and be put into place that prevents knife crime? We need to protect our nation from the epidemic that is knife crime. We have a big choice to make here. And as the 2017 MYP for the West Midlands rightly said, although he exclaimed in reference to the protection of the LGBTQ+ community, I would rather give up my right to vote at 16 to ensure that young people can live without fear of being stabbed or attacked. Please vote to save our nation from weaponry, to ensure that we can walk down the street without looking over our shoulders constantly, to stop knife crime.
And the lady I was going to call earlier, would you give your name, please?
Hi, I'm Shante Jackson and my constituency is Southampton. October the 10th, a month ago, in the space of 5 hours, we lost 2 young lives to knife crime. This is an epidemic spreading through our country and we cannot afford to lose any more lives. Last year, we vowed to try and reduce knife crime, but the truth is, 1 year is simply not enough. And the 292,470 young people that voted knife crime again this year for their devolved topic proved it. And it is clear that we cannot give up this fight. It is a desperate cry for help from the young people in our country. Seeing their friends hurt, seeing the devastation on the news. I ask, how can we vow to change the lives of young people if their place in society is not protected? But I have to stress that the end of knife crime is not in stop and search powers which unfairly target our Black and Asian communities, but in community centre funding, job opportunities, and a change in school exclusion policies. I beg you all to choose knife crime as your national campaign, not just for yourself, your friends or your family, but for our future, for a safer one.
And now to conclude this debate, I call Jack Heald from the East Midlands.
May I begin, Madam Deputy Speaker, by commending the efforts of my fellow Youth Parliament members, both in the quality of their speeches today and their hard work throughout the past year, while working on our campaign to tackle the scourge which is knife crime. They've appeared on television, on radio, and they've engaged with councillors, MPs and ministers, and I'm sure we all anticipate the publishing of the Youth Select Committee report in the new year. And I think it's also fair to welcome the government's commitment to adopting a public health approach to youth violence. This will include 20,000 new police officers and the introduction of a youth endowment fund. It is incontrovertible that our politicians now accept that this crisis must be tackled, and it will undoubtedly be something that the new Parliament will address. And we must be acutely aware of this when determining our next campaign. However, as a Parliament, we are still able to direct the course of policy. We still find ourselves reacting to this crisis rather than proactively remedying its root causes. While young people live in fear to go out into our communities or are enticed into crime to keep their families above the poverty line, this crisis has not abated. Our Parliament must be unequivocal. We must be tough on crime, but tougher on the causes of crime. So in our solutions, let's be radical and let's be bold. Let's give our constituents somewhere to go by making youth services a statutory provision. It is no coincidence that in the areas which have suffered most from youth service cuts have also saw the largest increases in knife crime. Let's give our youth workers the resources they need to be able to do their job and help us. Let's end the racial stigmatisation within Stop and Search, bringing our communities together rather than ripping them apart. It is manifestly unjust to infringe upon the civil liberties of some in quick, knee-jerk reactions. So, let's give our services longer-term funding cycles, emboldening restorative justice, enabling schools the chance to solve the scandal which is the rate of school exclusions. Let's not declare war on drill music, but on poverty, isolationism and the opportunities gap, the true root causes of the burning injustices in today's society. We cannot patch up the dam once it is burst. It must be rebuilt like our communities. Now more than ever, our communities must develop as safe spaces. Whether we are tackling the mental health crisis or a rise in hate crime, we must be aware that our communities are at the heart of the results we wish to achieve. We must tackle the poverty of hope systemic in our communities. We sing about a land of hope and glory, but there is no glory where there is no hope. Because opportunity, when afforded to a few, offers no hope. It is solely privilege extended. And these speak to the root causes of all our campaigns, saying to young people, regardless of your background, you will rise to your potential, not because of your background, but because of your talent. Undoubtedly, this is a behemoth task, but the fights which seem unwinnable are the only fights as a Parliament we must be willing to fight. So regardless of the campaign we choose, we must take courage in our convictions, delivering on our constituents' mandate, because if we can't tackle these, then what are we doing here? Let us reflect, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the 235 deaths since June of 2019. Our constituents, some as young as 13, many just at the wrong place at the wrong time, paid the ultimate price for our country's collective failure to act. So, we must act now. Therefore, let us commit ourselves, through whatever campaign we choose, to create a better United Kingdom and a more equal union of nations, a country which gives us all hope and therefore glory.
Well, we finished this debate. That was an excellent ending to an excellent debate. Very well done to everyone who took part. Now, we'll move swiftly on because I appreciate that so many of you still want to have the chance to speak. And the next and fifth and final motion of the day is protecting the environment, and the full motion is in front of you on the order paper. To move the motion, I call from Wales, Clarke.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, 2 + 2 is 4. My tie is red, these benches are green, and tomato is the best soup. Now, these are some quite undeniable facts, but if you'll allow me to add a few more, climate change is real, climate change is a threat, and we are already seeing the consequences of it. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am not using hyperbole when I say that 2050 is too late. I am not using hyperbole when I say that the price of inaction is a cost that is greater than myself, greater than this youth parliament, and greater than our generation. According to young people from most of our constituencies from across the UK, it is the #1 issue that we face as human beings. And as a human being, I see that we need a revolution. A revolution from the ground up. A revolution of the grassroots, of young people and old people and everyone in between. A revolution where the revolutionaries aren't carrying torches and pitchforks, but picket signs. A green revolution, Mr. Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, apology. Of course. Practice it 50 times in front of the mirror and it comes out. But revolutions don't always need to be big, grand gestures of change. They often begin with small acts which, over time, which act as ripples, which, over time, grow into larger tsunamis of change. This Youth Parliament could take any number of directions to be those small changes. We could advocate, we can lobby, and we can demand that 2050 become 2025. Of course, with less time means that there's more work to do, but Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sure I speak for many in this House today when I say we're ready for the challenge, so bring it on. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am not blinded by the fact that a campaign on this issue will not be the revolution we seek in itself. I know that in many ways it's already underway. But why are we leaving it to somebody else? A campaign to protect our environment would only serve to add to this revolution and act as a single and unified declaration of intent from this nation's official youth parliament, stating that we will not be the generation to see our planet in ruins, and we won't let our predecessors be that either. Madam Deputy Speaker, I see a revolution in front of us, so let's not fall behind. Let's make this bold declaration together, simply because we don't have 30 years left to waste. Jochum, I look forward to hearing the debate on this issue. Thank you very much.
But we'll have to stop the clapping or else we just won't get lots of people in. Just a quick clap would do it. To oppose the motion, I call from the North East, Clarke Kent, each others.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Hello, fellow members of the Youth Parliament. So, climate change, as we all are aware of, is one of the most pressing issues that faces young people today in the 21st century. Is a problem that does not discriminate, no matter your socioeconomic background, your race, your religion. It does and it will affect us all. But in the same way as this issue does not discriminate, this is not a battle for just us. I'm sure that we've all heard of the story of David and Goliath. In short, the story goes as follows. David, a shepherd's son, is pitted up against the beast that is Goliath. And in this story, David, the clear underdog, wins the battle. Much in the same way, we are the young Davids, the underdogs in this fight, because whilst we in this room are strong together, this issue aims to address a problem that is much bigger than ourselves. A campaign to us as members of the Youth Parliament is to help those who are helpless, using our position and contacts to make changes in our own areas under a single objective. However, will a campaign on this issue be enough or even necessary to fight the stone-cold wall that towers above us? Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, as a 5'5" guy pushing on 5'6", I can tell you, it is a very big wall. This issue lies not on the discussion of its importance, but of where this issue is fought, and we need to be realistic. We have reached a point where our efforts can only do so much. The bigger problem should now be fought at the top by the governments through means bigger than our own, because it is already being fought by us here at the bottom. You see it on the screens, you read it on the tabloids, and you hear it on the radio. Almost 400,000 people in the United Kingdom alone took part in the climate strikes, with millions of others around the world. We have people and communities recycling and reusing to limit their impacts on the environment, which is also evident in young people's fashion, where thrifting and second-hand retail saw a 9.2% rise in 2018 here in the UK. We're also making businesses adopt and respond to changes in our own climate-conscious lifestyles. These small changes are already being made, and if someone or some community is not, by heck, I can imagine that we would bring that up because the matter is already so apparent to us surrounding this discussion. Does this issue need another backing, saying that, yes, we young people care about climate change and protecting the environment? This battle is already being fought on the streets and the cities in the form of protests armed with banners of messages. However, should it really be the Youth Parliament's role to lead the way when great efforts to tackle this bigger problem is already being done elsewhere? A campaign decided today should be reserved for those problems that we can make a difference on and where those issues can be brought to light. And so I ask you to think about this bigger problem, where this bigger problem lies, and will this issue be enough of a campaign to sacrifice another issue of the opportunity? Because for the Goliath of the problem that this issue aims to address, it requires more than just small changes, and it requires more than just us alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have someone from Yorkshire and the Humber? Ah, yes, lady who almost fell over there. Yes.
I'm Maisy Alpha and I'm here representing the young people of York. And I'm only the third and hopefully not final speaker from Yorkshire. And on the subject of denying people a voice, it would be hypocritical to call for an enhanced and extended democracy, as we do, and then vote against the young people by prioritising anything but protect the environment. Please remember, we are not here to make laws or decide the budget, but we are here to represent the voice of young people. So please do the right thing. The other campaigns are valuable in their own right, but knife crime does not apply nationally. Curriculum for Life is just a drop in the ocean of an issue of an entrenched and intrinsically flawed education system. Protect the Environment is a coherent, backed-up movement that the people have voted for, and I urge you, as representing the young people here, to go along with what they say and do the right thing and vote for Protect the Environment. Thank you.
And do I have someone else from London? Ah, yes, well, gentleman there was first on his feet.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're all dressed up nice, we're all looking good. But I think it's important to realize the fact that in our society, in our world, we cannot grow up with ignorance. So it's so important to take into consideration matters such as the environment, stereotypical issues within our society, and many more. But the fundamental and most important issue, more than anything else to us young people, is our physical and mental well-being. So this is what ties into the mental health motion and why I urge you to vote for that one. When we go to sleep at night, it's not the environment that keeps us up. It's the anxiety and the stress that we may face or we are anticipating to face the following day. If you look around us, you see how diverse the room is. And quite typically, but not always, quite typically, from parents from ethnic minorities, they're unwilling to accept or unable to comprehend the fact that mental health is a valid and actual issue. How stress and anxiety isn't a good enough excuse to not get 10 A stars at your GCSEs. So, it's so important to realize that the environment will be tackled in many other ways, but for young people, our most prominent issue is our mental health. The fact that if I'm waking up for tomorrow for school, or my way to school, am I gonna make it? Because the streets are so dangerous nowadays. There's so much that can affect us and so much that can harm us. So that's why I urge you all to vote for the mental health campaign first. Thank you very much.
Do we have someone from the East Midlands here? Lady there.
Hi, I'm Husnit Bell from the East Midlands. I do think it's important that we protect the environment, but I don't know why I'm holding this. But I also think it's important that we consider the situation of around 3 million children living in poverty in the UK. How do you expect children living in poverty to care about the plastic cutlery that they're using to eat the only meal that they're going to eat that day? People have priorities and we can't blame them for that. Solutions that are being mentioned, 100% organic, fully vegan, no palm oil, but the reality is that these aren't accessible for everyone. And so why would I campaign for something that isn't inclusive and representing all of the people that I want to represent? And so, yeah, I do think that we should protect the environment, but I also think that we should tackle the issues that young people in the UK face whose voices aren't being heard. Thank you.
is there anyone from Army Welfare? We haven't. Sir.
I'll just be brief. I'm sure all of you have heard of Extinction Rebellion, and I'm sure you've seen them in the news climbing on tops of trains, forcing them to stop. This only makes the public alienate them and undermines the campaign. I'm sure all of you are passionate about protecting the environment, so instead of climbing on the trains, organise stuff like beach cleans, or, well, I don't know, just beach cleans, I guess. Well, all right, thank you.
And we haven't had anyone from Scotland. Oh, we have had one. Someone else from Scotland. Sir.
Fraser Brown, Mid Scotland and Fife. Environmental protection is important. So important that thousands of organisations are already tackling it. We can use this opportunity of us voting here in the House of Commons to vote for something that's less talked about and represent our constituents in a new and personal way, not just by adding to the masses of environmental protection groups. So vote for tackling hate crime for your UK-wide vote, because a lot is being done for environment, but not enough is being done by hate crime. And no matter if protect the environment is passed, we will continue to fight for action to be taken. Thank you for listening.
And are you indicating you'd like to speak, sir? Yes. Go ahead.
Deputy Speaker, my name is Vladislav Rosarski. I'm an MYP for Bracken Forest, and I would like to congratulate both MYPs who proposed the motion and the one who opposed it. I would like to introduce you to a different perspective on looking at things, and I understand that every single one of the topics on this order of business is equally important to me. I understand that if you look at these sheets, everyone has an opinion on which one should make it to the top campaign, and I would like you to consider curriculum to prepare us for life as a foundation for every single one of them. And let me explain what I mean by this. Is protecting the environment is undeniably a very current issue, and it's bigger than this room. It's about the youth as much as it is for the elderly. Now, curriculum to prepare us for life should be used as a foundation in our schools to illuminate each and every single one of our problems, whether it be mental health or using the classroom to go beyond it and make an action on protecting the environment. It could also be used to help us with politics, because as I understand, Vote at 16 has been a recurring issue time and time again, which people have been wanting to speak on, but you can't expect people to vote without giving them the education. Similar thing happens with protecting the environment. We can't expect a conversation without an action, and action stems from preparation and education. Thank you very much.
Gentleman with the waistcoat and the red tie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm Francis Humboldt from the mighty Darlington. Today, I would like to agree with my friend from London, who so eloquently put it that climate change is something that is bigger than all of us. Realistically, 1 in 8 of our young people, aged 5 to 19, are suffering from a mental health problem. How is it that we can put aside their needs to vote in favour of a campaign when scientists agree that an estimate of about 12 years is in place for when we will be affected most by climate change? Truthfully, the young people in our constituencies and across the UK who are suffering with mental health issues do not have the luxury to worry about what may happen 12 years in the future. They do not have the luxury to worry about what may happen even a year in the future. Instead, they are condemned to worry about what people may think of them, about how they may be judged, and about the constant suffering and agony that they face every day. If youth MPs in this Parliament will not stand with me to protect our most vulnerable people in our constituencies and our society, I ask why we stand at all. Thank you.
My name is Papi Mansfield-Jones and I'm from the South East, and whilst I have loved every second of listening to you all today, I know that I'm going to go home and tomorrow I'm going to sit with my Kent Youth County Council, and I'm going to sit all day in Maidstone and we are going to work through some amazing issues. And I just want to remind you that whilst we sit here as the UK Youth Parliament and we feel amazing and we feel like we can do so much across the whole of the UK, It isn't like that, because we don't meet on a regular basis. We can't do things like that. And I swear to you, in Kent, what we've been able to do already, and as young people, the opposition said that we shouldn't, as young people, be working on this because it should be a government's point, right? And it should be. But when you think about things like mental health, that's to do with the NHS, that's to do with funding from the government. We can't actually do that much on that. This issue about the environment is something that we can do in all of our areas. We can all make a difference no matter what we do. In my school even, I've managed to create an eco-society. We now have compostable packaging. We have recycling bins. We've got a little mini orchard for biodiversity. We're lobbying people every single month with student strikes. We have councillors coming in. I have a councillor coming to my school to talk about cycle lanes. These are things that we can do in our local area. Although this is incredible, we cannot ever have these kind of things on this large scale happening. We tried to do knife crime this year, and in Kent we found it incredibly difficult. We met with councillors, we've managed to try and kind of set up select committees, but it just won't work because we are young people. There are some things we can do incredibly well as young people that are emotional, that are about things that actually affect us all. And education and things like Curriculum for Life, of course, they're going to lead us into all of those kind of things in our future. They're going to educate us on how to be sustainable, how to be, you know, the kind of people that are going to stop hate crime. And that is so important. But there are things we can achieve and there are things that we can put onto the government. And I would say, you've seen it already. We have student strikes, we have Extinction Rebellion, and they are all led by young people. The environment is in a horrible way a young people's issue because it hasn't had enough done in the past by people that are older, people that already have been working on it. We've known about it for years and years and decades, and nothing has been done that is enough. And it is up to us to do this. So please, please vote for Protect the Environment. We can all make a difference when we go home today if we choose this, but we can't all do that with some other topics that we have here. I can't solve mental health. I can't solve knife crime. I can't solve hate crime. But I know in my local area that I can make a huge difference if I give myself that time to protect the environment. If we vote for that, if we are able to give ourselves that time in our areas as UK Youth Parliament members to do that, we can make a difference. So please, please vote for it. Thank you so much.
You're all confusing me because we don't stand up in this chamber. We don't stand up and clap to congratulate people like in the theatre or at a concert. Standing up means you want to speak. And lots of you are not saying, that's more like it, then I know where I am. Gentleman in the pink shirt.
Right, hello. My name's Jude, I'm from Yorkshire and Humber, and I'm going to be going for Protect the Environment. Hello MYPs. I believe that at this point, quelling this climate catastrophe is undoubtedly the most pressing and universal issue for not only the UK, but the whole world. Climate change is repeatedly mentioned, yet people neglect the fact that climate change is a class struggle. How can we tackle the crisis at hand when we are so ignorant as a society to the fact that we need to enable those who cannot currently afford to lead sustainable lives to do so? Nobody should be so neglected by the state that they cannot even join the fight against global warming. We need to be subsidising eco-friendly sectors, drastically improving infrastructure for electric cars and cycle lanes. However, it is not just individual efforts. The majority of the fight needs to be taken to the doors of number 10 and the colossal carbon polluting companies around the world, because ultimately they're the people that are affecting it most. You know, it's great, you know, not using plastic, not using single-use plastic as us, but we have to look at the 70% of all carbon emissions done by the biggest companies. We need to look at that as young people and say, that's not right. That is something we have to tackle. And it is sad that we've been placed with this mantle of responsibility to do so, but we've been given it now, so we might as well act. We, the young people, will set the flames of the climate revolution. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Madam Deputy, fellow members of Youth Parliament. Greta Thunberg said, "Our house is on fire." But she's wrong. It's not our house. It's our home. Our home is on fire. You can move houses, renovate them, sell them, and then move into another one. But when it's your home, it's different. This earth is the one place we have, and yet we still don't take enough action to save our home from destruction. Our home is on fire, with its clear blue springs, scenic woodlands, and picturesque mountains. They're all at risk of slowly being destroyed. In 20 years or so, who's to say how much of our world will be left? The Scottish Youth Parliament have already started their national campaign, Pack It Up, Pack It In. Yep. But Scotland aren't the only ones affected. This is a worldwide issue, and this is not enough. Please, a vote for this motion would not be meaningless. It's a vote for the life as we know it. Let's protect our home. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's so difficult to try to get. It's so difficult to get out. No, we've been from that side, so now we'll go to this side. I'll take the lady in the blue dress. Right. Cut someone from over here in a moment. Would you give your name, please?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chair. Zain Al-Sood, Wolverhampton, West Midlands. We only have one planet, one world, and one home. And if it wasn't for Greta Thunberg, sorry to mention her again, I seriously doubt this would be the most voted for motion. Once again, it is up to us kids following a trend to deal with our planet's illness. We can do the Friday strikes as many Fridays as we want, but we cannot waste our position of influence that we have and not use it on our planet. It seems the politicians don't realise that this is a land we will grow up in, raise our kids in, try fish legs for the first time in, climb the Eiffel Tower in, fall in love in, fall out of love in, grow old in, and eventually be buried in. We have to do more about our environment, and we shouldn't think that our actions are inconsequential because we are only one country in a group of hundreds. We should use Britain's position of power to influence other countries to follow behind in our lead. We had no problem with invasion 100 years ago, so we should have no problem with persuasion today. We can't be selfish, which is why politics rarely highlights this. We have to work together with one another, for one another. I'm not Christian, but I like to quote the Bible, Genesis. God looked at everything he had made and he was pleased. So please, whether you believe in God or not, let's do whoever or whatever caused this earth to be into existence proud. Thank you.
I know this is really difficult. Is there someone from the Northwest? Because the Northwest has been called. Oh, sorry, the lady at the back, the lady with the black. Go.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Climate change. Everyone is affected by it, yet so many choose to ignore it for fear that they can't make a change. As a group of young people, even though some think we can't, we most definitely can. We have a platform that is listened to. So many young people think, what can I do? What can I do in my area? It's about going back, speaking to our areas, telling them this is what we can do in our area, whether that's beach cleans, or that's even just simply doing litter picks. Make Your Mark this year was amazing for us, as although Protect the Environment came out on top, it also told us that litter was an issue. These two issues link. It's about finding issues in your area that link together and working together to make those issues better. Thank you.
Okay, now we're supposed to be order. We're supposed to be winding up now. But do you reckon that you could get through those division lobbies and do the voting in under half an hour? Right, so if we think we can do that a bit faster, we can take a few more speeches. Right, but not very many. Order, it's just this side now. I'll take the gentleman with the glasses.
Thank you very much.
Right, no, sorry, I'm sorry, that was very difficult because but my eyesight's dreadful. We'll take that gentleman first and then I'll call you next.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much. Alex Maidens for Telford Reeking from the West Midlands. Without sounding too hubris, there are very few things I am scared of personally, but But I will admit there is one thing I'm actually quite terrified of, and it shakes me to my core, and that's climate change deniers and skeptics. They are terrifying. They diminish my faith in society, and whilst other issues remain prevalent, we must stand with our brothers and sisters in Extinction Rebellion. The ignorance through basic facts and figures cannot be carried on to the next generation of politicians. No matter how mentally healthy, knife-free or accepting we are of each other, we cannot hold back the rising sea levels and the extinction of animals. So let's turn off the coal power plants and build more wind farms and EV charging stations. The government is successfully working on mental health initiatives and hate crime. I don't trust the Department of Education to bring sufficient curriculum for education into our school, so we must come together to make it economically beneficial for the private sector to be green. So let's vote for a greener Britain, a greener Britain, a better Britain and a better world. Thank you.
Gentleman with the rose.
Thank you. Thank you. Climate change will affect all of us. Now, many people believe we are far from these effects, but they are wrong. Increasing sea levels are drowning small island nations. Air pollution is suffocating major cities like London. And the lungs of our planet, the Amazon rainforest, is burning alive. This may all sound dramatic, but our planet is living and its life is at stake. As young people, we will have to face the worst effects of the climate crisis. But we still have time. We still have a chance. I put it to you that our environment is central to our survival. Protecting our environment will prevent millions of species from extinction. Protecting our environment will save beautiful, natural spaces from destruction. Protecting our environment will stop the most damaging effects of climate change. And that is why I urge you to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My name's Leighton Anderson and I represent Highlands and Islands, and I am the most northerly MYP. I'd like to talk about the environment and how it's affected my local community. Shetland has been hugely affected by climate change, from our vast fishing industry to tourism. My fellow Scottish MYPs have heard me say this before at our own national campaigns, where we chose pack it up, pack it in. The Shetland puffin population has dropped hugely since 2000. There was over 33,000 puffins on the island in early spring. That figure has dramatically dropped in 2017 to only 570, and there's no sign of any recovery. My fellow MYPs, think about your communities. Think about how they've been affected. Personally, I think this is horrendous. That's why I ask you to back environmental protection. Not just for the puffins, but for our future. Thank you.
The lady with the pink pad.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm Emma Greenwood from Bury, North West. The time for change is now. We're the last people that have the power to do something. We need to stop putting profit in front of preservation and protection. It is estimated we have 12 years to take action, and this action must be drastic. So far this year, we've lost 18.7 million acres of rainforest and 2,000 species have become extinct. These numbers are not opinions but facts, further supporting the scientists who continue to fight to get those in power to see the threat our planet is under. Every single one of us is going to feel the effects of climate change. So denial is no longer an option. We need to stop treating it as a what-if scenario and realise it is just a question of when. The Chief Executive of the Environment Agency has warned that within 25 years, England may not have enough clean water to support the current demand. I want this to scare you. This should not be something we are growing to accept. This is so much more than political problems, austerity, capitalism, or Brexit. This is the existence of our planet. This is our future. So we need to see those in power act and put their differences aside to ensure that current and future generations have access to one of the most basic human rights, the right to a safe place to live. So I urge you to support this motion so that we can ensure the UK can work in unity with other countries across the world to tackle the one thing that no one is safe from. Thank you.
We haven't yet had anyone from the southwest over here. Who's from the southwest? Aha, lady with the red hair.
I'm Ella from the southwest, Exeter. I haven't written anything down because honestly this is terrifying to me and I wasn't planning on speaking, but I feel like I have to say what I'm thinking. Everything that's been said so far I completely agree with. We need to take action immediately. Everything needs to be done that we can to save our planet, ourselves, our children, and even the adults that it may affect who are surviving to the consequences of what they've made. However, how can we expect people to make enough change if we aren't educating them as to how they can make those changes? Not only for us, not only for our children, but so that we can teach the adults whose companies and whose cars, the fumes are killing our environment. How are they supposed to know that if they were never taught it? How are we supposed to know it if we never get taught it? As was said before, I think by someone over here, we probably wouldn't be known about it if it wasn't for it becoming such a trend recently. How can we expect people to make big changes if we aren't teaching them how to do it? Therefore, we need a reform in the education system, i.e. curriculum for life. So I would suggest that we really consider voting for an education system that teaches us about climate change and not just taking action that we know is going to be very, very difficult to do immediately. Why doing it immediately when we know we can make it last longer and have a more substantial effect on our children and their future? Thank you very much.
Lady at the front. Yes.
Jude Smith, MYP from the Northwest. Too many people are trying to destroy the environment, and it's going to get worse for like animals and stuff because there's no chance for them to get saved at all. Thank you.
Sorry, this is terribly difficult. My clerks are saying that we really ought to be winding up now. So I'm terribly sorry. I must tell you that it's always like this. It's always like this in Parliament, really. As we come up to the end of the day, not everyone gets called, but I'm afraid that we've got to leave enough time. We've got to leave enough. Look, I'm going to do one more from each side. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do one more from each side. I'm going to take the gentleman in the black jumper. One more person from here, which we will sort out in just a moment. Sir.
Thank you. My name is Ewan Brett and I represent Norfolk Central and South. Never before have we faced a threat so direct, indiscriminate and impending that impacts not just our nation, not just Brits, but mankind as a whole. Last year the government was forced to announce a climate crisis. Now we need them to act like there is one. I want them to be scared, to react, and to feel the same fear our generation faces daily, not knowing if there'll be a world for our future children to live in. Not knowing if our houses will survive the next 100 years. The very homes we know and love could be gone. And how do they respond? With arbitrary promises. 0 carbon emissions by 2050. Well, that's not enough. 2050 is too late. 30,000 scientists from over 120 nations agree that if something is not done in the next 20 years, then it will set off a chain of reactions resulting in a climate catastrophe. So I call upon my fellow MPs to vote on this issue, and it's time for us to wake up the House of Commons before they sleepwalk millions to dead. Year on year, we plead the change, we plead that they make a difference, but they do not do enough. So I ask you at number 10, what are you going to do to save our one chance, our future? Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, I'll take the lady in the red jumper.
My name's Martha Lucas and I'm from Hackney. The UK is being selfish. It continues to emit carbon dioxide, harmful carbon dioxide into our environment. But who does this affect? Well, it affects the most disadvantaged in our world with fires, droughts and floods. The most disadvantaged who aren't even contributing to this problem. This is not fair. We close our eyes to the reality, which is that we are harming our own world. And we close our eyes by having that reusable water bottle, by drinking from that can. We think, it's okay, I am making a change. But these small changes are no longer enough. They are no longer enough, and we need a campaign, we need a big change to make a difference, because as everybody has eloquently said, we are running out of time. We need to make a change to protect our environment, and we need to make it now, because it's so easy to ignore. It's easy to ignore that packet of crisps earlier, which wasn't recyclable. It's easy to ignore that water bottle that we bought. But we need to make a bigger change, and we need to start now, and that's why you should vote to protect our environment.
And finally, no, I'm really sorry, because we'll all be in trouble because we'll overrun and then you'll miss your trains, etc. I'm so sorry, but we're going to have the final winding up speech for this debate, which is from Northern Ireland, Cormac Savage.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think it's safe to say nobody's happy to see me standing here right now. Now, we are staring down the barrel of extinction. Ice caps are melting, communities disappearing, our sea levels are rising. We have been given an ultimatum in the March for Climate Justice: 12 years to change our ways or face catastrophe. In the words of Priya Darshi Shukla, one of the authors of the UN report on climate, the next few years are probably the most important in our history. Now, the spotlight is on us as a youth parliament, the voice of those most affected by this crisis. We must today make a final, definite choice. How do we, as the representatives of this endangered future, plan to take real action? Can we afford the bureaucracy of modern government? Is there the time? Let me say this to you: all the summits, inquiries and conferences in the world will not fix the climate emergency ravaging this planet. This represents the struggle of a generation, our generation. No all-party parliamentary group, no report, no pledge and no target our government can set will bring about the green revolution we need to save this planet from destruction. Since 1999, 16 and 17-year-olds in this country have campaigned for the right to vote. 20 years later, we see their fight must still go on. On this issue, we do not have 20 years, we have 12. It is a bleak truth. 20 years from now, it will be too late. We need to take action now. This is an issue where empty pledges, bureaucratic dilly-dallying, placeholder promises cannot and must not count for anything. Youth MPs, the future has called to us for real action. For the sake of future generations, I dare say we must answer that call. But does that include a campaign? Are the hoops of bureaucracy worth even attempting to jump through? Or is what we need a movement? Millions of people changing lifestyles, taking to the streets, telling the corporations and fossil fools that ravage our planet for their own gain that we have had enough of their climate complicity. Youth MPs, we know there is no planet B, and it falls to us, those with our futures truly on the line, to take up the gauntlet, step outside the government, march in our thousands, and shed light on the crisis of the millennium. Madam Deputy Speaker, our sea levels are rising, and so must we.
That wasn't the final word.
I could talk for hours about this. And as the Prime Minister of these nations, Boris Johnson, dismisses us out of hand as uncooperative crusties, colleagues, I stand here before you today proud to be an uncooperative crusty, because while this planet's future is at stake, I will not cooperate with those who continue to choose pollution over solution, Rolexes over rainforests, and climate change over system change. When our leaders see fit to disregard our thousands of pleading placards, it begs the question, is this a matter for our own hands? But as a youth parliament, when young people vote in droves for a climate revolution, should we not be the leaders in this revolution? As the voice of the young people of these nations, do we not owe it to them to not only join them in this fight, but to be leaders in it? Is that not our mandate, colleagues? For Greta Thunberg and the almost 400,000 young people in Make Your Mark who stood against climate inaction and proclaimed, down with this sort of thing for the fossil fools of government to hear, must we not act here today in this House of Commons? They shouted a message to the halls of power. Down with climate complicity, down with the empty promises, and down with the bureaucracy stymieing us in this fight. Today, we walk the halls of power, and we must decide how to act. They have sent a clear message to power itself. Manage this crisis. Be not the leaders we have in climate, but the leaders we want, the leaders we need, and indeed the leaders we deserve. Colleagues, for these almost 400,000 young people who sent this message, must we not do everything in our power to answer their pleas, bear the torch of action, campaign on environment, amplify their voices, and make change the priority of those in power? The question you must answer today is simple. Is a campaign on protecting our environment a brick in the wall of climate justice? Or would we be nothing but more uncooperative crusties, talking to a brick wall, begging for our salvation, disregarded with hollow words, empty promises, and dismissive duplicity? That is the question you must answer. Gura míle mágah. Thank you.
Order. Now, I note that the way in which you are going to vote is rather different from the way in which we normally vote in here. And just so you get a little taste for how we normally do it, let's just have a little vote first before you go into the lobbies. Now, normally at this point, I would say, or the occupant of the chair would say, the question is whatever is before us. So I put it to you that the question is that it is the greatest privilege in a democratic society to sit in the chamber of the House of Commons. And then I'd say, as many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order. Order! I'm so glad you all agree with that, because it is indeed an enormous privilege to sit on these benches, and there are thousands of people, literally thousands of people at this moment filling in nomination forms in 650 constituencies across the country, competing to be the next 650 people who have the enormous privilege of sitting on these benches. The Youth Parliament will now vote on which of the 5 subjects debated today it will select as its 2 national campaign issues for 2020. In the lobby, you will each be given 2 ballot papers, 1 white paper for the 2 reserved, that is UK-wide subjects, and 1 green paper for the 3 devolved, for today's purposes, England-only subjects, that affects those from Scotland and Wales. You should place a cross in the box next to the subject you would like to vote for on each ballot paper, and hand the completed ballot papers to the doorkeepers in the lobbies. Afterwards, please return to your own place in the chamber. Those of you on my right, that's on the government benches, should leave the chamber by the door behind me and turn left into the I lobby behind to vote. and those on my left, the opposition benches, should leave by the doors at the far end and turn left into the no lobby behind you. And members of the House of Commons staff who I can see loitering at the doors will be on hand to assist you. The division lobbies are now open. Division!
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to have another photograph, so whatever you did earlier on in the photo, can we just make sure you go to those positions again? So, thank you.
Order! Everyone look at the photographer. There we go.
That was a rhyme.
Hey! Well done, everyone. We're not allowed to do it right here. We'll try to do it afterwards. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Done as fast as you. You ready? Order. Order. Members of the Youth Parliament will now make speeches on the anniversary of Peterloo and political reform. A really important subject, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. To begin with, I call from the East Midlands, Molly Lambert.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. To introduce Peterloo, I'd like to start by saying 200 years ago, up to 60,000 working class people marched to demand political representation at a time where only wealthy landowners could vote. Many of the people who were inspired by Thomas Paine's book, The Rights of Man. Said book was written in 1791 and contains a statement that reads, "There are two classes of people to whom the laws of England are particularly hostile, and those most helpless, younger people, and the poor." Upon reading this, a clear idea of what political reform I would like to see came into my head. We should reform the prison system, this time focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment, especially for those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds or have been roped into crime through processes like county lines. Prisoners that can be rehabilitated deserve the chance to be helped, whether it be with their mental state, their addiction, or whatever else they're struggling with. What would be most effective would be to help them by providing psychiatrists, hobbies, teach them to write, to paint, to work out, to cook, anything that not only could transfer to a job on the outside, but could also feed their hearts and souls. I'm stood here telling you that our system doesn't work. Reformation could change that. I'm so grateful to get to stand here and remember the people that died at Peterloo. But it's just such a shame that blood had to and must still be spilt before someone takes action with something that needs to be fixed. Thank you so much.
Prajwal Pandey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The right for common people to vote has never been free. It's always come at a cost. Costs such as the killing of protesters in St. Petersfield 200 years ago on the 16th of August 1819, a time in our country's history when only the wealthy and those at the top of society had the right to vote. The Peterloo Massacre. The Manchester magistrate requested the Manchester Yeomanry Cavalry and the 15th Regiment of Dragoons break up the meeting of more than 60,000 political reformists in St. Petersfield, Manchester, who were lobbying for the right to vote to be extended to the working class and the citizens of Manchester and Salford, who at this point had no dedicated MP. Upon receiving this request, these two regiments went on to attack the demonstrators, men, women and children, leading to over 668 casualties. Though the demonstrators were suppressed on the 16th of August 1819, their actions were a great contributor to the almost universal suffrage that we have in the UK today. The passion, the spirit and the heart of the masses in St. Petersfield lives on today in the passion that we have in our democratic system. Following the massacre, newspapers propagated lies. They claimed that the demonstrators, who were in fact peaceful protesters, were rioters, and that the meeting was right to be broken up by violence. The mass media abused their power. They manipulated the masses and caused political reform in Britain to be further delayed, and the political reformists of those times were forced to circulating their own discrete newspapers to counter this fake news. Rather than looking at why direct reforms could be made to our political system, we should be focusing on and countering those who wish to intervene with our fair, democratic political system as our next major reform. Fake news. Again and again, we see social media platforms censoring individuals expressing their own opinion. And again, we see media outlets manipulating information and being allowed to spread fake news. And we just watch. We watch while they swing the masses into believing whatever fits into their agenda. Not much has changed since the time of the Peterloo massacre in this respect, and if we do not act, if we do not ensure that our rights are not restricted, if we do not ensure that fake news is not circulated, then the struggles of the more than 60,000 demonstrators on the 16th of August 1819 in St. Petersfield will forever be in vain. Thank you.
And now I call from London, Nick Papanicolo.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I stand here in the Mother of Parliaments, a place seen as a beacon of democracy, and reflect, we did not arrive here by design, but through the struggles of our predecessors. 200 years ago, over 60,000 working class men, women and children marched at Peterloo, peacefully protesting for political representation. Though their modest demands were met with violence and 18 dead, their vision and sacrifice paved the way on a democratic journey. And yet, that journey has stopped at a time when democracy lacks inclusion. It is broken. The answer is to finally empower the 1.5 million 16 and 17-year-olds that are excluded from decision-making, and to reconnect and re-energise an entire generation with the spirit of political engagement. The answer is votes at 16. At 16, we can pay tax, we can marry, and even join the army for the ideal of democracy, but we can't take part in it. Let us in. Why were we unworthy of a say in the EU referendum? Us, who will be most impacted by the outcome. We deserve to be heard. That is why we must continue the legacy and the journey of those that demonstrated. Let's not stop. Let's continue to perfect, expand and embrace democracy and make it work for all. Lastly, you've heard all this before. That doesn't mean we should stop fighting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the northeast, Ben Guadagno.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the 16th of August 1819, the Manchester Yeomanry Cavalry was given orders at 1:30 to charge at the radical demonstrators. This private militia was used by the influential landowners to hold on to power, resulting in 18 dead and over 600 injured. This was the age-old story of David versus Goliath, except this time, the catapult was embodied by the democratic voice of over 60,000 people marching, paving the way for parliamentary democracy. The powerful were correct. It was a radical idea of voting, the idea that anyone can voice their opinion. And yet it is the most elegant idea any human being has ever come up with. It is the most sacred and fundamental pillar holding up our democracy, and it is under threat. I am talking about the political data manipulation issue happening all around us 24/7, where political advertising companies use data mining without your consent to know more about you than you know about yourself. Swarms of online bots create a new, personalised, distorted reality for you on a scale hitherto undreamt of, if excessively manipulating the way you vote. And with such a defining moment, we are woefully unequipped, with the majority of data protection legislation being 15 years old. And so, I am here today to raise awareness about this political reform, as Goliath is very real and very much alive. And in the memory of those 200 years ago who paid in blood for the values we enjoy today, we as a generation need to take back control of our opinions so that their efforts may not be in vain. Thank you.
Thank you. And now from the northwest, I call Adam Said.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We look back on the Peterloo Massacre today as a commemoration. 18 people killed while simply exercising their right to protest. And today, we thank those who gave their lives for allowing us to vote in a fair democratic system. However, when commemorating events, we must also not be blind to modern-day examples of such atrocities. Countries around the world still see violence in the face of peaceful protest. We didn't look any further than Hong Kong, where so-called rioters have been physically abused, pushed down escalators, and even shot. Protesting remains, and presumably always will remain, an integral part of international politics. Protesting allows those with restricted voting powers to express their voice in search of political change. The strikers in Hong Kong, those in Iraq protesting to end years of corruption, and yes, youth climate strikers. And while 200 years ago, 60,000 stood in Manchester on St. Peter's Field, demanding their right to vote, and were met with violence. Today, thousands of young people, also in Manchester, stand on St. Peter's Square, demanding that they won't have their right to see old age stripped from them. Those who died, were injured, or even stood at Peterloo serve as an inspiration to us all, young people and adults alike. So when the next opportunity to skip school to combat climate change, or to march through our central cities to promote cleaner air, or simply to be part of something bigger than us, let's honour those at Peterloo and take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And from Northern Ireland, Conor Boyle.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today, each one of us can be incredibly proud that we have come here today to take up residence in this House. A House we know as our Parliament, and a House that's known across the world affectionately and, in my view, rightly, as the mother of all parliaments. Yet anybody who has an interest in history, like I do, will understand that this country has not always been the mother of all democracies, and there's a real distinction there. As a nation, therefore, it's more than appropriate that we reflect today on the Peterloo Massacre. Today is about remembering the 18 of those who were brutally killed on St. Peter's Field. The sacrifice that each one of those pioneering souls made should be a source of great shame for the nation that was. Those who came out to protest called only for the right to cast a ballot for their parliament. However, in addition to remembering, we must also make an attempt to look back at the progress that has been made over the interregnum 2 centuries. Peterloo was, for its time, a radical political event. The call of mainly working class men of England to get the right to vote. They dared to question the faraway elite who made decisions in their name. Their so-called outrageous demands were met by the Manchester Special Constabulary and the yeomen of both Cheshire and Salford in a cavalry charge which left almost 20 dead and as many as 700 injured. Today, let William Fields, who was only 2 when he fell from his mother's arms, Mary Hayes, a pregnant mother of 6, and so many others be in our thoughts and memories. I'm sure, Madam Deputy Speaker, that you will all will agree that these make for grim listening. Yet, Madam Deputy Speaker, in a way, is that not the point of today's commemoration? Could something like that happen in our country today? No, of course it couldn't, because our country has been irreversibly transformed since that dark day.
It's right that we look back soberly, but let us today also celebrate with pride the 200 years which have come since. Be it the Great Reform Act and the franchise that was delivered to all men, Disraeli's Declaration of One Nation and the repeal of the Corn Laws, followed by more reforms which lowered the voting age to 18 and this time extended the franchise to the women of this country. And finally, Mr. Speaker, we had the Parliament Acts, which asserted the supremacy of this House of Commons, the People's House, over the House of Lords. And of course we had the devolution of power, which brought power closer to the people of this country. From the Isles of Scilly to the Isles of Shetland with the Puffin, from Fermanagh through my native Armagh and the whole way to Suffolk. In particular, Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, this youth parliament should be encouraged by this history of ours. And we should know that if we are bold enough, brave enough and strong enough, then we will follow in the footsteps of our inspiring forebearers. We will let their memory be always in our thoughts and let it be a testament to our resolve to fight for the change that we seek. Thank you very much.
And now I call from Scotland, Aaron MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This year marks 200 years since the Peterloo massacres that seen innocent protesters killed and injured by the British cavalry. It was a defining moment of the 1800s for those seeking to make our country fairer, more democratic and yes, more representative. As we commemorate 200 years, it comes on our generation to come up with what reforms we would like to see. I believe we need an overhaul of our parliamentary system that is seen by many to be out of date, out of touch, and yes, a bit crusty. I believe we do this by having an elected upper chamber that would see all regions, areas, backgrounds, and yes, life experience represented. But I believe this upper chamber must have dedicated seats to be filled and elected by us, the young people, so that young people can have a real say in what laws are made in the governance of our country, to finally make our country fair for every young person. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the South East, Rory Moore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 200 years ago, tens of thousands of people came together to demand political change. With only the wealthy elite being allowed to vote, residents of what is now known as Greater Manchester marched into the centre of the city. They demanded that their voices be heard in the political process. But this action was not taken without sacrifice. 18 people were killed and hundreds injured as they peacefully demanded the right to representation. We must recognise that these people died trying to secure their right to vote, our right to vote. And that's why it's crucial, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we use that right. Turnout in elections and referenda is at its lowest amongst young people. For instance, in the 2015 general election, just 43% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted, compared with 78% of over 65s. So how do we address this? Put simply, we need to introduce mandatory political education in schools across the United Kingdom. Our education is so broad nowadays. We learn about everything from how to solve quadratic equations to how to analyse Shakespeare's work. So why can't we add the basics of democracy to that list? The thing is, voting is a fundamental aspect of life, but we can't expect young people to participate if they don't know how it works. An informed electorate is a key part of a functioning democracy. And if we educate young people about our politics and how to find information, and of course how to evaluate its authenticity, they'll be more engaged. And this could help tackle the shockingly low numbers of young people that vote. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, most importantly of all, a political education would give young people the confidence to go and exercise the democratic right which people died for at Peterloo 200 years ago. Thank you.
And from the southwest, I call Jamie Burrow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 200 years ago, on the 16th of August 1819, over 60,000 ordinary people took to St Peter's Field in Manchester to call on the government to give them the right to vote. At this time, only rich landowning men could vote, and many believed that this was unfair. The protest later turned violent when private armies were brought in and killed 18 of the peaceful protesters and injured over 650. That's more protesters injured in Peterloo than there are MP seats in the House of Commons today. And now, 200 years on, people still march peacefully to call for action on different issues. For example, since Greta Thunberg started her climate strike last August, thousands of people in the UK, many of whom are school-aged, including I'm sure many who are sat in this room now, have called on the government to take action against climate change. We young people passionately call for the protection of our futures. It is we who will be hit hardest. There have also been multiple marches recently, campaigning for a people's vote on Brexit, many organised by young people, again because we will be most affected by the outcome, an outcome that we have not had a say in. And that is what UK Youth Parliament is here for. We are here today because we insist on having a say in our futures. Thank you.
And from Wales, I call Dylan Lewis Rowlands.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Reform, universal suffrage, equal representation and love. Words in the mind and ideas in the heart of those who died at the Peterloo Massacre 200 years ago. In the hearts of those who stood together in peaceful solidarity. And ideas that should be in our hearts today. Because reform, we need to reform our way of life to tackle climate change. We need to reform our system so that every voice is heard. Universal suffrage and equal representation. Key ideas for this youth parliament, while we have and while we continue to fight for Vote to 16, while we campaign on issues close to our hearts across this country. And love, because in a world and a country that is bitterly divided, love is what can unite us. And in a time like ours, we need to stand together with protesters from across the century for those same ideals. For in remembering Peterloo, we remember that we not only fight for ourselves and for each other, everyone in this room, but also for those who gave their lives what they believed in. And though I hope no one in this chamber has to give their life what they believe in, I also hope that the memory of those who did 200 years ago inspires us to change our society any way we can, like they did at Peterloo. Thank you.
Thank you. And now from the West Midlands, I call Millie Gould.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We are standing on the shoulders of our predecessors. 200 years ago, the peaceful Peterloo protesters paved our present-day political autonomy. However, the Reformation has not gone far enough. The majority of young people are disengaged and apathetic towards politics. Hence, only 57% of 18 to 25-year-olds turning out to vote in the 2017 general election, compared to 84% of over 65s. In addition to this, those from poorer socio-economic backgrounds and or ethnic minority groups have a considerably lower voter turnout rate. It is hardly surprising that those with the power are those with the political capital, the currency that allows them to achieve political reform. Politics should be a multiplayer game. In fact, politics shouldn't even be a game. But we live in a world of corruption and exploitation where the system can be cheated and manipulated. That is not a democracy. However, if those at the top are not playing by the rules, perhaps the rule book needs to be open and accessible for all those who want to play. Politics has become a microcosm for the elite and wealthy, suppressing the disadvantaged and disenfranchised as the underdogs. We demand a level playing field. Knowledge is power, and everyone should have the right to a substantial and non-biased education on politics. Transparency is crucial in order for a true democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final speech on the Peterloo anniversary
comes from the representative of Yorkshire and Humber, Torrin Zeeble.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 200 years ago today, working class people from Lancashire gathered at St. Peter's Fields in Manchester to demand parliamentary reform. Back then, Manchester and the Great Mill towns had no representation save 2 MPs for the entire county. That meant that huge swathes of the population had effectively no representation. MPs often lived well outside their boroughs, and some represented rotten boroughs, ancient settlements with little population. Manchester had a population of over 60,000 but had no MPs save them 2 county members. And so, on the 16th of August, over 60,000 Lancastrians gathered at Manchester to hear the orator Henry Hunt making the case for the reform of Parliament. The local magistrates, who had rented a room over the field, panicked. They read the Riot Act, unheard by everyone but themselves, and the justices of the peace ordered the troops into the crowd, slashing with sabres and shooting with muskets indiscriminately. Over 650 were injured and 18 killed. The leaders were afterwards jailed for sedition. But journalists from Manchester and London had witnessed the day's horrors, writing sympathetic accounts in their newspapers. And in 1832, government reformed Parliament, scrapping rotten boroughs and extending the vote. Now, the reform that I want to see and that you will want to see changes each year, and it will change every year. But what we must all remember is that it is thanks to Peterloo that we are all standing here today. Being given a chance to be heard and represent young people, let us not remember Peterloo as a day of sadness, but a day of progress and unity.
Thank you very much. I am very impressed that you all appreciate and have made such moving speeches about the development of our democracy. And I know that you will never forget that the freedom that we have today has been hard fought for by the people who came before us. And your presence here in this cradle of democracy today is part of taking that democracy and defence of freedom forward for future generations. Thank you very much for all that you've done. That concludes our main business for today, and we'll now move to the closing statements. And I would like to call the House of Commons Librarian and Managing Director of Research and Information, Penny Young.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yes, I'm Penny Young, and I am the House of Commons Librarian, which is a fantastic job and a great privilege. It was the library that provided your briefings for the debates today. We also publish information on pretty much everything relevant to debates that happen in this place, and indeed for MPs' constituency work. An awful lot on Brexit, of course, but also you'll find information I can guarantee on things that you are personally interested in. Just recently, for example, we've published briefings on school funding, on the social background of MPs, about support for care leavers, food banks in the UK, and something I confess I didn't know much about until I read the briefing, loot boxes in video games. So if you aren't already, do follow us on Twitter at Commons Library and sign up to our briefings. And please consider the Commons Library as a career move. We need fantastic people like you, because I must say this whole thing is just utterly amazing. So congratulations to each and every one of you on a fantastic day. You've debated issues that are of the utmost importance, not just to the young people here, to the young people who voted in the Make Your Mark campaign, but to the country as a whole. We're all in Parliament very proud of you all. Today marks the end of UK Parliament Week, which has seen an amazing over 1 million people across the UK explore what democracy means to them. Everyone's voice must be heard, and it can have real impact. It was the determination of young people which led to the government agreeing to fund free menstrual products in secondary school. Public engagement really can lead to a more inclusive society. So please don't lose the passion that you've shown today. We've also heard speeches about the anniversary of Peterloo and political reform. It's important to remember this long history as we head towards another general election. And of course, you know what I'm going to say next. You can only influence the UK Parliament if you engage in it in some way. So if you have a vote, and I'm sure most of you who have will have already registered, but if not, please register and use it. And if you're not old enough to have a vote yet, spread the word, tell your friends and family, take to social media, write a blog, lobby absolutely everybody in your network about the importance of having their say. If I may, a few people and groups of people that I'd like us to thank. First of all, I'd like us to thank our chairs for today. It was Lindsay Hoyle's first public engagement as Speaker of the House of Commons, and thanks both to Lindsay and to Eleanor for facilitating this debate and ensuring that we've heard all of your views. So a round of applause, please. And thank you too to colleagues across Parliament who've made this sitting work. There's just absolutely loads of people. I won't be able to mention them all by name. This includes colleagues who work as doorkeepers, in broadcasting and the media teams, as clerks for Hansard, in catering, visitor services and security, and of course in the library. And most of all, colleagues in our education and engagement team in participation. And we have Emma and Michelle sitting up here. As I said, I can't name everybody, but I would like to take the opportunity of standing at this dispatch box to mention one man who's really made a difference to our engagement work in Parliament. When our Head of Education and Engagement joined us just 5 years ago, in fact under 5 years ago, UK Parliament Week was still quite new. It was a great innovation set up by other colleagues, and in 2016 there were just over 300 events and activities reaching about 25,000 people, which actually at the time we were quite proud of. This year, there are over 11,000 activities reaching 1.2 million people in 47 countries. This person has achieved this through an absolute determination to transform our engagement work in Parliament, through being really good at working with colleagues across Parliament and beyond, and breaking through just a bit of organisational red tape, because we do have some in Parliament. He's an absolutely inspiring role model. So a goodbye from me, and let's say thank you to everyone who made today happen, and a special thank you to Mr. David Clarke.
Thank you very much indeed, and many thanks to Penny Young as well for all that you have done to make today happen. I now call Farah Khan from the Southeast.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Penny, you've highlighted many of the thank yous, so thank you. I would like to firstly thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, who chaired our debates today, who allowed us to contribute, to show our passion, to show our logic, to show our understanding. I would like to thank my fellow MYPs for showing their passion, for showing that we can make change and that we can stand together. I would like to express and tell you that these qualities are that which politicians should possess. These are qualities that we have all seen in MYPs and members of the Youth Parliament today. I would also like to congratulate and commend my fellow members of the Youth Parliament for their incredible and outstanding efforts and contributions throughout the whole of the Make Your Mark process, throughout their local campaigns, throughout their local initiatives, and through the teamwork and camaraderie that they represent every single day, throughout every task and campaign that comes our way. And today, where we have once again showed that we are change makers and great people in the making. Well done. Thank you, fellow members of the Youth Parliament, for proving stereotypes wrong, for showing that we are not apathetic as young people. We are here today, for showing that we have care in politics, proving that we are accepting, proving that we are diverse in every single way. Look around you. I actually want you to look around this time. I've seen many people say that, but look around. We are diverse in every single way, all presenting passion for change, for politics and for democracy. Thank you, members of the Youth Parliament, for proving to all the viewers of the proceedings today, tomorrow, and to the world that we as young people are here for the greater good and to make change. Inspire and make this world into a better place. Thank you, MYPs, members of the Youth Parliament, for proving that we can make decisions, we can cooperate, and that we can and do compromise to present unity. Thank you, members of the Youth Parliament, for showing that we are not defiant, nor deviant, nor uninformed on current affairs. Fellow members of the Youth Parliament, we are an inspiration to so many young people. We give a voice to the young people and we represent our constituencies. We make them proud in that fact. And we show their opinions, we represent them. We show that their voices do matter, like the Peterloo campaigners did, which they lost their lives for. They say that change starts with you. And we have shown that today, members of the Youth Parliament. I would also like to thank my fellow members of the Youth Parliament who have spoken on political reform and the Peterloo massacre that have deeply touched me. Thank you. As I actually took part on the 200th anniversary in Manchester City Centre and made a speech on why they lost their lives. I would like to recognise the fact that throughout their trials, tribulations and turbulence of the struggles, there were always young people who stayed strong and fought for what they believed in. If they believed in something, they stuck by their cause until they saw that change occur. I hope that we will take the same initiative on and stick by a cause that you believe in. Never stop speaking out and up for what you believe in unless you see that cause become a reality, members of the Youth Parliament. And to all those young people watching these proceedings today, never silence your voice. I'd like to remind the key decision makers of this country that throughout those trials and tribulations that my fellow members of the Youth Parliament highlighted today, especially throughout the Peterloo massacre, the importance of listening to and valuing the voices of young people was very and is very important. And today, that principle, as I'm sure you guys would agree, is more important than ever. I would like to thank the House of Commons staff, particularly the doorkeepers, the UK Parliament's Education and Engagement team, and the library team, who produced research reports for us today. I would also like to thank the British Youth Council, who actively encourage us, youth voice and leadership, who provided this platform today for us to debate and engage with politics and the voices of young people. Now, members of the Youth Parliament, as we head home, we should be thinking about how and what we're going to do to work on the national campaign that will be spoken about later on, and the other incredibly important issues we have spoken about. To see changes, we must stand up for them and keep working on them with our communities, with our local politicians and with our local authorities to provide young people with a voice and an opportunity to make change. It all starts with you, members of the Youth Parliament, Let's make this national campaign a huge success so that we can make change together. Therefore, as I'm just going to finish now, as you all want me to. So, finally, as you all know, we are now in Purdah, leading up to the general election on the 12th of December. Therefore, all images, footage, media, and information will be released on the 13th of December. Thank you, Youth Parliament.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We now have the results of the votes. Yes. And the results are as follows. For the subjects which are England only, that is devolved matters, mental health got 69 votes, curriculum to prepare us for life, 86 votes, and put an end to knife crime, 87 votes. So, those passionate speeches on put an end to knife crime put that one just ahead. But then we have on the UK-wide issues, and I would remind you that the winning UK-wide issue will be launched as a petition once Parliament's back in session in the middle of December. The petition will be considered for debate in the House of Commons if 100,000 signatures are received. And looking round at the political activism in the chamber today, I will be very, very surprised if 100,000 signatures is not massively exceeded in this matter. The two subjects upon which you were voting were tackling hate crime and protecting the environment. Tackling hate crime got 68 votes, and protecting the environment got 179 votes. Very well done, everyone. So stop the clapping. So the proposal that we believe that we have a responsibility to protect the environment from the effects of climate change for the next generation, and that the government should look towards carbon neutral alternatives, will be put as a petition and hopefully will be debated in due course in this chamber by the newly elected Parliament after the middle of December. I would like to remind BYC support workers, guests and parliamentary staff to vote also in respect of the Paul Boscott Memorial Awards. Please pass your votes. You all have votes on that? Please pass your votes for Best Debate Lead Speech and the Best Backbench Contribution to British Youth Council staff. And before we adjourn, may I extend thanks to those who facilitated today. Thank you to members of the British Youth Council and Parliament's Education and Engagement Department for organising today's sitting. To Phil Howes and his team of doorkeepers for ensuring its smooth running. Yes. I must tell you, members of the Youth Parliament, that it's the doorkeepers who always know what's going on here when nobody else does, and we rely on them. And to the clerks at the table who have diligently upheld procedure, and to the Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms for ensuring our safety. And they can all have a round of applause. And finally, I would like to thank all of you for your passionate speeches, for your interest and for your clear dedication
to upholding democracy and freedom. Somebody up there said earlier that there's something, you said there was nothing you were afraid of except those who deny what is really happening. Well, my fear of the future is much diminished today when I see your generation coming forward and acting the way you are, and I wish you all the very best in all that you're doing. And I hope to see you here in the future. Order. Order.